Hello and welcome. This is Japan, and we're going to go over AEW Revolution that happened on Sunday. A little late to getting it up on the channel. I wanted to record it right afterwards, but it was a long show, so ended up being a day late, but we're 2 days late, I guess, technically. So we're going to jump into it. Essentially, it's a long card. I put the pre-show matches on here also because I did watch them, so I figured this is the best time to rate them. And yeah, so we're gonna just jump into the pre-show, which is the first three here on the 0 hour. There was technically four, but the other match didn't happen because Jericho ripped off Gravity's mask. I was like down to see that match, but then it was like, I guess that's it. So I don't know. The 0 hour sometime is wild for me. Like that, they just put some crazy stuff on the line. So yeah, let's just jump into it. So the first match was Hologram and Commander versus Blake Christian and Lee Johnson. I'll be honest, I have absolutely no clue who Blake Christian and Lee Johnson is. I have never seen these people in my life. I have seen Hologram and I have seen Commander. Commander is one of my like hidden gem favorite wrestlers. I mean, it's like I don't even want to say hidden gem because there's a lot of people that know that Commander is good, but it feels like he's not. He's just not out there anymore. He was on AEW quite a bit. Now they have him in Ring of Honor, which he does get more screen time on Ring of Honor. So I mean, I guess I would prefer for him to do that. And Hologram's another one that's kind of like up and coming. That like he's been out there and like shown a lot more. He was being shown on AEW, but now it kind of seems like it's 50-50. I think this was a pretty good start to the show. Obviously, the high flying luchas were amazing. I would say if it was just them, I think that this would have been a higher match. But I think altogether it was a B. It wasn't anything too crazy. Obviously, like the pre-show matches are a little less than the other ones. Like they're just kind of thrown together, and some have a little bit of a story, but not a lot. And speaking of that, is the next eight-man tag team, which just kind of felt like it was all over the place of like teaming wise. It was Daniel Garcia and the Undisputed Kingdom. I think they're kind of like teasing Adam Cole and Daniel Garcia eventually having a feud. I'm not sure. I'm not like I watched most of the show and I know most of the major storylines, so that might be a storyline. I just don't remember. And it's against the Shane Taylor promotions. I've seen a couple of these people, but like I haven't really seen this group together. I think the match was adequate. I wouldn't really put it anywhere too crazy on this list. I think I'd put it in a C. It was enjoyable. Like it wasn't super long for an 8-man tag match, and it was like 10 minutes. It kind of felt like it flew by. I think it was just kind of there to get some extra bodies. Like the pre-show is not bad. I just wish like we also didn't have a huge stack card or something. Like a pre-show would almost be better just to have it the day before, but then that would run into Collision. But I don't know. I just feel like sometimes it's just they're kind of random. And then speaking of random, we had the next 6-man one, which was Big Boom AJ from the Costco guys, with two of the conglomeration members, which is Mark Briscoe and Orange Cassidy. And then Big Justice and the Rizzler were also there, which is just insane to be saying this in a wrestling thing. Then we had Johnny TV and MMM Collection, which I actually kind of like this as a slight faction. It kind of has like the same vibe, but also kind of different enough that it could work as a tag team, as a trios. I'm not against it. I think they're more ROH guys at the moment, but I didn't think it was too bad. This match itself was semi entertaining because of all the crazy random stuff, but there was a lot of also just kind of weird stuff like Johnny TV and Tyra Valkyrie just making out in front of a child, basically, because the Rizzler's out there. And so I'm just like, I felt like this should have been a little bit more family friendly to a certain extent. Like it's kind of the brand for the Costco guys not to be super weird like that, but I guess it works. I put it in C. I did like the 8-man tag better than the 6-man tag, but it isn't the worst thing that I've seen. So we'll jump into the main card. I think this was one of the most like more hyped rivalries, which is MJF and Hangman Adam Page. I think the match itself I thought was pretty solid. It had a really good back and forth, and like they have a really good in-ring chemistry. I thought it was so far, but obviously the best match of this card, but it is the very first match and it beat all the 0 hour, which is good. Like it's kind of good that you could beat the 0 hour shows because not all the matches can be said on this thing. But I think overall, I would put this in an A. It was really teetering on the S for me. I feel like it could have possibly been a little bit more tightened up and maybe a little bit smaller, like shorter of time to like just kind of make it more jam packed. I definitely felt like there was some wasted time in there. Not much, but when you're kind of nitpicking on AEW, like, their claim to fame is having the best wrestling, and I feel like that could have been better and more like suited for this match, just a little bit better. Honestly, it's like really on that cusp, so it's really not much of a complaint, but I would put it in A. Next up was the match that I was second most excited to see because I love Momo and love Stardom and stuff. So I was like happy to see her get this opportunity, even though I knew it wasn't going to be a good thing. But the match kind of was semi disappointing. I don't really feel like they had much in ring chemistry. Their build up was a lot better than the match itself. Like build up rivalry till this match. So I was a little disappointed in that. But I think overall, I feel like it was still adequate to put in the show. And I think like the where Mercedes Moné normally is on the card, it's normally always towards the back of it, like towards the main event side. I think putting her in this two slot kind of like made it feel a little better. So like the pressure wasn't as on her to be like, oh well, this was a crap match because this was a main event. I feel like that little bit of less pressure made the match better too, and I think it maybe made it a little bit easier on people. I'd put it in the solid B area. Probably not one that I'd go back to, but it was already kind of predetermined, like to the T, that there was no way Mercedes was going to lose to somebody who's not even part of AEW. So why would they have an AEW championship? So it kind of felt random to a certain extent, but it did give Momo like a way to show off to the world and like be out there and stuff, which obviously you don't really get when you're in the world of Stardom as much. So I was kind of glad that they basically allowed uh, her to have that opportunity that not always you don't always get that, so it's kind of crazy. So yeah, B I think is a pretty good solid spot to put her in. I'll put them in, and yeah, I would love to see this maybe ran back, but I don't think for the story and everything, it would make sense. Then we had Swerve Strickland versus Ricochet that turned into a number one contenders match. I feel like that was kind of random. I don't feel like that was necessarily the thing. I think eventually when you see like the main event and all that transpires in the main event, I think that's probably why they did that. But it was basically for the robes. I thought was mainly what the whole thing was for. This match I thought was really solid. I particularly liked it. I'm a big fan of Swerve Strickland, and obviously Ricochet can do good stuff in the ring. And I think his best mic work and character work has been in this feud. So I would put it in a solid A. I think it could almost get to that S tier. I'd have to probably watch it again, but I feel like it just definitely was missing a little bit. And they had some little backstage, stuff with Pritz Nani. I just think they should have just let them wrestle. Like, it's weird when they want to choose to do the story in AEW, they choose to do it in the most inopportune times. I don't know why. It's just a bad formula sometimes. Like, I really do like AEW. It's just sometimes their formula of their storylines or wrestling matches are just not it for me. I know it's just more of a personal taste because I like WWE and I kind of like that style, so like I have to compare it to that because that's what I like. And I just don't really get that as much compared to like other promotions. At least like for me, like Stardom, I obviously don't know a lot of the storylines always going on because I obviously don't speak the language. I try to keep in to seeing like X and stuff that people where they discuss it, so I kind of know. But like I just enjoy the wrestling and the showmanship in the ring, that it's enjoyable. And I try to do that with AEW, but sometimes that story gets into it and it's not always the best. But yeah, let's go to the next match. It's Okada versus Brody King for the Continental title match. It kind of feels weird that like they're burying the Hounds of Hell like hell like this, because like Buddy Matthews lost to Okada, and now Brody King lost to Okada. What, are we gonna have Julia Hart face Okada next? Like, I don't know what's the point of having them kind of have this new faction that like they get propelled, but then they get kind of just slammed down. I don't think this was Okada's best match, or like even his best match in AEW. There was some glimpses of what he can do, and I just don't think. I think they've been like capping him a little bit. I don't know. Maybe he's dealing with an injury, or it's just kind of what they're wanting to do with him. But I'd put this in B. Out of the B tier matches, I think it's the lowest one on it. But it's just kind of, I guess, you each your own on that one. But yeah, I think they're building up Okada versus Kenny Omega, especially with what you see at the end of the card. So I feel like if that's the case, I'm here for the road, but this side of it wasn't that great. Next up, we had the tag team championship match. Was the Hurt Syndicate versus the Outrunners. Now I think like they kind of like subbed this in all of a sudden, because I think it was supposed to be like they were feuding, like the Hurt Syndicate was feuding with other people. I mean, I could be wrong with that. It just kind of felt random. I mean, I kind of like the Outrunners. They have a cool vibe to them, but this kind of just felt like a squash match. It didn't really feel like there was much on their side. I personally think, without too much spoilers for the rest of the card, this was the worst match of the card. Even some of the pre-show matches were better. I just feel like it didn't feel like it was really much of a match. If this would have been a pre-show match or like the first or second, maybe it would have felt a little bit different. But like being this so late in the card and being kind of like pivotal to like one of the biggest, or it's like the first defenses, right, for the Hurt Syndicate, it didn't really feel like the Outrunners had any chance at it, and like they should have hid that at least a little bit. Then we go to the women's title match, the Hollywood ending match, which was Toni Storm versus Marissa May. Now, if you don't like blood, you're gonna hate this match. But they were innovative with a lot of their violence. It's really crazy to say that, but with the glass and the like, they had the tape around their hands and they filled it with glass and they punched with it. I was like yeah, it definitely got me wincing, but it definitely was one of those matches that I had my eyes glued to because it was just kind of crazy, and it's one of those things where like blood I don't always feel like is needed in a match, but there's certain matches where it does elevate a feud, and I feel like this was definitely the good match for it. The Falls Called Anywhere match, like where you pin them, I think it was like that side of it was perfect because like having it on the stage and kind of like almost in the same spot that that Tony Storm got turned on by Marissa May, I thought was like it was very fitting. I like this whole feud. It did kind of get broken up over the year in different parts, so like it's not great. But if you put this in a compilation video of just like their feuding, I think you would get a really solid like storyline with matches and stuff. But I thought it was a pretty good. This was my favorite match so far. I put it in S tier. The wrestling was also top tier, so that also helped. But yeah, I definitely thought it was a great match. And then we had Kenny Omega versus Kankeshita. Uh, it's crazy that these two just absolutely went out there and just hammered each other because this was a just it felt like a short match, but it was 28 minutes. But like there was just so much stuff going on. I like Kenny Omega, and Takeshita is probably my favorite wrestler this year so far. I've like seen all of his matches, and like I've been like entranced with this guy, being like, man, this guy is phenomenal, and it continues. I don't think I've seen a match really that's less than S tier or not A tier, but like it's up there. Like everything's up there. I think this one is a no brainer S tier for me. I really enjoyed it. I thought the spots were great. Obviously, both guys looked amazing, and the title change that could set up Kenny Omega maybe versus Okada at some point, and I think that would be pretty cool. I mean, that would be pretty cool. Yeah, S tier for me. Next up, we had the steel cage match, which was Will Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher. This is also like another one of like, is this their third match together? I think this is their trilogy. Obviously, adding that steel cage added so much more violence and brutality. Um, these two just know each other really well in the ring, so it puts a good match together. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to really say anything with Will Ospreay's in there. It's like one of those wrestlers that like, if you like wrestling and like love just to see out there, he's one of the best. I feel like sometimes people think he's kind of bland with some of his other stuff. It just kind of eat your own on that one. I still can, if you watch him and see some of the stuff he does, it's insane. And Kyle Fletcher, like I never really knew much about him before this feud with Will Ospreay. I think he's definitely stepped into his own and shown how good he is. Me personally, I really probably gonna put this in S tier. I think it was like really close, but like depending on how much you like liked this like type of wrestling, because it's like obviously like you had all the good stuff you normally had, but then you had the brutality. I feel like having two brutal matches in this card and not that far apart was a little much, but that was just me personally. But I still can show that it was a good match. And then we get to the main event. There's a lot to be said here. And yeah, so the match itself, which is Adam Copeland versus John Moxley, I don't think it was a good match. I feel like the match itself just they're like, hey, nothing about age or anything, but like, man, they just didn't have what that match was gonna need. And then they decided to just overbook it because like having Christian Cage cash in his contract, I thought it was kind of the natural progression of things, and I really thought that's where they were gonna go because Christian could have won and they could have got the belt. Like they could have literally like Moxley could have lost it to Cope. Then Cope got beat by Christian to cash in, and then Swerve gets the next up and already has a feint against Christian. So like there could be a lot of stuff that they could have progressed this storyline later, and it kind of just felt like they closed all these doors real quick, and it's just done. Like I don't know, I felt like their story was a little off, but yeah, I definitely like this match a little bit better than the tag match. Um, Not by much though. So, yeah, with the failed cash in, which is I think their first ever cash in event. I could be wrong. I'm not that in depth with AEW, but I don't think they've ever had a cash in before. It was kind of odd just to have it like that, and it just felt like not the greatest moment to do it. And then obviously they had Swerve attack Moxley at the end. I thought that kind of tried to save it, but it was very overbooked, and I didn't like it. I'm gonna have to put it in D. It's crazy that the main event fell so short, and I must even seen the title. It's so crazy that they just keep it in there when it's like a big deal to have it like out in the open. You would expect something to be shown with it, but yeah, I feel the match and the card itself, at least this card, I think in general, I would probably put in the A range. I thought it was really good. It's just too long. They add these extra matches. I mean, obviously the pre-show, none of those matches had to have to be on there. They definitely could have, nixed the Okada match and then, maybe got rid of the tag match. And then it would have looked a lot better. And even if you had that, stale main event, the card itself would have looked a little bit better. It's just too long. That's always my thing for AEW. It's just a little too long for me. I don't mind sitting watching wrestling all day, but like when it's just back to back to back on, especially towards the end, it was just like brutality and great wrestling, and then you kind of just had that failed ending. I just kind of felt, yeah, I'm not really sure, but yeah, I think overall I didn't think it was that bad of a card. So tell me what you guys think, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.